How's it going, everybody? We have Bill Blair here. I'm not sure if you guys recognize him without the makeup on, but he is the world record holder. I'll let him explain that precisely. But Bill, tell us who you
Sure.
are, we may have seen you in, and what accolades. Because I'm shocked. I looked at the number. I was like, "There's no way."
Well, hello. Yes, Bill Blair. For those that don't know the face, but have seen, if you're looking behind me, you see some of the characters that I have done. Uh, I hold the Guinness World Record for the most special effect makeup characters portrayed in a career. It's a very long title, and that was a title decided by the Guinness World Record people. They wanted to include not only TV, film, but live performances, stage, everything. And that record number is 202. And we can talk a little bit about how I came up with that a little later on here.
Absolutely.
But primarily, you might have seen me or not seen my face in shows like Star Trek and Babylon 5, X-Files, Charmed. Alien Nation was one of the first ones that I did, uh, which is actually where all of this kind of started out on a rolling basis, of time and time again. And there's a nice story behind that. And but way back in the early 1980s, I actually started out in Chicago and was in a couple of movies back there. My very first movie I did was for American Playhouse on PBS.
Okay.
It was called The Killing Floor. It's one of the first credits you would see on my IMDb page. And that just happened because I was working at a modeling and finishing school in Chicago. And one of the people there is actually the owner. His daughter was doing casting for that movie, and they needed a whole bunch of extras. We called it back then. We call it background actors now,
Mhm.
uh, for this one scene. And so they were basically asking anybody and everybody they knew. And I said, sure, might sounds like fun. I mean, back then, 1982, it paid $25 for the entire day.
Oh wow.
Well, considering minimum wage was like a dollar something, maybe $2 back then,
Wow.
whatever it was, that was fair.
Yeah.
Uh,
Absolutely.
but doing what I do, I don't just follow the crowd. Which is exactly what I was there for, to be a part of a crowd. But when we were on a break, I went and I would sit and watch, because this was my first experience. I'd never been on a movie set before. I was very, very curious, which is my nature.
Me too.
And having only done theater and stage at that point from high school and into my theater days in Chicago, I heard somebody say rehearsal. I thought, that's interesting. Don't you rehearse this before you get here to do something like we do? We rehearse in theater days and weeks before we put the show on.
Yep.
So I learned right away that no, they rehearse the scene itself, block it out, and then they come back and shoot it right away.
Hmm.
So I was learning, trying to figure out whose job was what. And while I was sitting there, one of the assistant directors came by and told the person in charge of all the extras, we need somebody to play a security guard that we haven't seen yet.
Hmm.
Apparently, they didn't have enough planned or something. So I just politely I was within shouting distance, but I just kind of held up my hand and got their attention. We were outdoors. And instead of saying, oh, I'll do that, I always learned early on, ask a question.
Hmm.
May I help you with that? That's my professional approach,
All
which
right.
has been well for me. And they said, well, where were you? I said, well, that big crowd that was over there, I was at the back of it.
Hmm.
So I don't know how much I've been seen. And they said, okay, great. Take him to wardrobe. I mean, they just took my word at it. It was
That's
great.
awesome. Yeah.
I guess I have that very trusting face, despite the makeup that I'm behind.
Well,
And
you
what?
definitely. Well, you asked the question, so like they're like, hey, maybe he knows what he's doing.
Who knows? So I went and I became a security guard, and they walked me up to the front where the cameras are.
Hmm.
And now I start to get a little bit nervous. It's like, what did I get myself into? I don't know what I'm doing. This is my very first time. But they walked me very, very kind. They walked me through it. They told me exactly where to stand. The first shot basically was over my shoulder. towards the principals. Well, actually, the first shot was a master, which was a wide shot. And then they did the over the shoulder from me. And when they were done with that, I started to leave, and they said, "Oh, do you mind standing in for yourself?" Well, it was my first experience of what do I do? And they said, "Well, just stand right where you're at." I learned that a stand-in does exactly that, stands
Huh, okay.
or sits. They take the place of the actor during camera setup and lighting.
Hmm.
And long story short, the camera comes around, it's aimed directly at me this time. And it's that, "Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up" moment for me in my
That's
very
awesome.
first movie.
And
And
people
that's
wait
when
their
I
whole
kind of got
careers.
hooked, and I thought, this is kind of fun. I could enjoy this. So after that experience, I started looking and seeing what else was available around town in Chicago for this type of thing. And that's when, back in those days, you wear out your shoe leather, you knock on doors like the old door-to-door salesman.
Mhm.
And I came across a door, and I mean, a lot of these producers, media people had offices and studios in all these old Chicago warehouses.
Hmm.
So I just started in one building. Anything that said production, anything that said had to do with media, I don't care what it was, I'd knock on the door and find out.
Mhm.
Carting along with me all my headshots and my resume and everything. Dressed nice, had my little double-breasted polyester blazer suit on, the fashion of the era.
Right.
And I got lucky. I actually knocked on the door of a production company by the name of Joel Settlemeyer. Now, that name doesn't ring a bell with a lot of people. However, if I say, "Where's the beef?"
Yep.
Now everybody recognizes that from the Wendy's commercials.
Yep.
That's the door I knocked on. Young lady answered the door. I didn't really have to say but 2 words except to introduce myself. And she says, "You know what? Stand right here. Don't move." She took me in the office, stood me against a wall, got out the Polaroid camera. Yes, we used Polaroids and actual film back then.
Yep.
Said, "Don't smile. Just look right at the camera. Blank face. I'm going to take your picture." Boom. Done. She said, "You were never here today. These auditions were yesterday, but I know this is exactly the look he wants."
Wow.
Not about a few days later, whatever it was, I got a phone call. They said, "We want you to come in and audition." So I did. It was a very easy audition for Joel himself and his clients.
Wow.
"Thank you very much. We'll let you know." Very,
Mhm.
very classic. "Don't call us, we'll call you."
Mhm.
A week later, I got a phone call. And they said, "Well, they didn't really want you for one of the principal roles, but they'd really like you to come back in and play one of the extras, the background in the office scene."
Hmm.
I said, "Sure, why not?" Again, more experience. Well, by taking opportunities and just being agreeable and having knocked on a lucky door, that morning, Mr. Settlemeyer came up to me when I was just wandering around, getting to know the area, the studio and everything.
Mhm.
He sought me out. He walked up and he auditioned me again right then and there.
Hmm.
We got to the end of that scene that day and he calls out my name. They had added 2 taglines to this commercial.
Hmm.
Now, if everybody doesn't know what a tagline is, it's usually a couple of words. It's usually a closing, where you close up the scene of the commercial or whatever. And sure enough, he picked me out of that crowd and said, "I want you to do this." And all I had to do was repeat back to him. He was a very interesting director for commercials. He knew exactly what he wanted. He said it, you mimed it. In other words, you were a mirror of him. Whatever he said, you said it. Whatever the inflection was, you repeated his inflection.
Mhm.
We did probably 10 or 12 takes. We were done.
Wow.
And back in the 1980s, that one day that was only going to be like maybe $75 after residuals over the next 2 years turned into over $4,000.
That's a lot of
That's the
money
way,
back then.
yeah, that's how lucrative the
Wow.
industry can be. And just the lucky break, right place, right time, just I can't say it any other way. You just put the effort out.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen every time. That was one door out of probably 200 that I'd knocked on over 6 months.
Sheesh. That's crazy to think about. That is, and just a commercial with residuals, $4,000 back in the '80s. Wow.
And that
Just
was for one 8-hour, 9-hour day.
wow.
And it qualified me for the Screen Actors Guild.
Okay.
And it qualified me for my first year of health benefits.
That was it. Wow.
So it was more than just the $4,000.
Yeah,
So
that's the start of your
that's how
career.
someone can work. And that's really how I got started back in 1982, 1983, 1984, when I was living in Chicago.
Wow. Wow. So, what was your first makeup? Do you remember?
Yes, first professional makeup.
First professional makeup, yes.
Yeah, I'd done a lot of Halloween and high school theater and things like that.
Okay. Cool.
But as far as the first professional paid makeup was when I had moved from Chicago to Dallas.
Okay.
And I was there for about 5 years. And near the end of my 5th year, I got hired to portray a character in a live stage show
Hmm.
for the Oracle Software Company. They were
Hmm.
having their annual conference in Dallas at the Dallas Marketplace.
Okay.
They were introducing their new networking software. Now you got to remember, this is the mid to late 80s. You know, first computers from Texas Instruments and Intel were just coming out. There was no such thing at this point known as networking. Every computer was pretty much on its own, even within an office.
Yep.
Now they come up with this networking software. You can talk across the entire country.
Wow.
So in order to promote this and to, what's the word I'm looking for?
Debut.
Debut it, promote it, demonstrate it.
Okay.
This live stage show, we had 3 setups: center stage, stage left, and stage right. Stage right was 3 astronauts, actually 2 astronauts and a cosmonaut, all dressed in character with a mock-up of a rocket ship behind them, and they're all in astronaut costumes and fittings. Stage left, we had a Star Wars setup with Chewbacca and Luke and Leia. Can you guess what center stage was? Star Trek.
Okay. So
And-
wait. So if I'm not mistaken, so you dressed up as Star Trek without being part of Star Trek yet.
Correct.
Okay.
And what ended up happening was we have a Kirk and an Uhura, and yours truly is Spock.
I could see that.
It was just a little parody. And Kirk was really good at mimicking, the type of speech that William Shatner used for Kirk. Uhura was her perfect self at the communications console. And when something didn't go right, Spock actually went out of character. And when he couldn't actually fix it, he just kicks the side of the console and it starts working. And the whole thing, Spock, how? It was logical.
That's great.
It was that kind of character.
That's great.
But what made it the first makeup was they had gone, really, they didn't know any better. They'd just gone to the costume shop and bought 3 Star Trek outfits, a gold, a blue, and a red. And they brought it back. And of course, with the blue outfit for Spock, had these plastic, poor quality elf ears, which you're just supposed to slip over your ears.
Oh, geez.
That's like, no, this is not the kind of quality I'm going to do. I had about an hour left before showtime. I ran up the street about 3 blocks to the makeup store that I knew. Came back with some nose and scar putty and a little bit of white fibrous material and a whole bottle of spirit gum. And I basically did some, like an artist sculpting a pot or something. I mixed up all 3, Well, I mixed up the two really, the nose putty and this white fibrous material.
Mm-hmm.
I mixed it into a compound all its own, nice and soft, coated my ear with spirit gum, let it get tacky, and then literally molded this compound that I'd made onto my ears,
Wow.
tucking it up underneath this cartilage here.
Mm-hmm.
So here I'm pointing, everybody's got it.
Yep.
And then wrapping it around the back of my ear and smoothing it down as best as I could into the edges.
Wow.
And I had a little bit of alcohol so I could get things really nice, because I knew I was going to have alcohol to clean it up with.
Mm-hmm.
It had just enough time to set up before we went on stage. And of course I had to apply the makeup to match my own skin tone. And I had to make my eyebrows look right.
Wow.
So it was a real challenge. But what was so important to me about that was we were going to be going into the audience at the end of the presentation, singing this new jingle that Oracle had come up.
Okay.
I just had to know that somebody was going to reach up and touch my ears. And I did not want it to be something that was going to fall off in their hands.
It's a pro. That's a
But it was
professional right there.
what was such a compliment was I walked by and people actually were making remarks about, they're actually real. Are those real? Of course, I would never answer them.
Yep.
But yeah, even when we were doing photo opportunities afterwards, people would come up and they were, when I was facing them, when we were, like close proximity to each other, most of them were trying to touch it as I passed them in the audience. But when we did photo opportunities and they were standing right there, they were polite enough and just looked at them and cocked their heads around and says, "Are those real?" I said, "Well, that's your choice."
That's awesome. That's a pro right there, though. Like, no matter what the opportunity, you're like, I'm going full on. I'm making this the best possible I can definitely do. That's crazy. That's awesome.
And that was my first time not only portraying a special effect makeup, but actually being the makeup artist.
Yeah.
That didn't actually happen to me again until 2007.
Oh, wow. With that ingenuity, I figured you'd be, let me do this. Let me try. That's awesome. That's crazy.
I did not. I'm like Bones. I'm an actor, not a makeup artist.
There you go.
However, let me jump ahead to 2007 for you.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very interesting story. I was working on the internet fan film, Star Trek New Voyages Phase 2. And I was brought in to play a character by the name of Commander Blodgett. The other special guest star was Denise Crosby. 2 days before I was supposed to fly out there, I get a call from them and saying, "We just lost our makeup artist. Could you fill in?" At which point I said, I'm an actor, not a makeup artist, but yeah, okay, I'll do my best. So I called my assistant and sent him over to the makeup store that I knew, where I'd been, knowing some of the people that had been in and out of there because of just makeup relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And I had them send him back with exactly what I would need. And I told them specifically, don't give him the large quantities, just give him the small bottles. I only need this for 2 days. And then I called one of my makeup artists that I work with at conventions in Cleveland. And I said, I need every bit of scrap that you've got. I don't need molds. I don't need character molds. I just need everything that you pull off and usually throw in the trash.
Wow.
At which he said, okay, fine. And I told him the address to send it to, because I was going to have to meet me there. So I get out to New York, upstate New York, where they do this. And the whole point was I had to put all these injuries, burns, scars, bloodiness on these people. I got a few tips from my makeup artist about how to do that, what compounds to use. So yeah, this was the other time when I ended up doing my own makeup, 9 other people. I had one assistant there that I was training more or less as we went. I would show them how to do one and say, okay, now do the rest of them. Mm-hmm. And I ended up doing the character Spock, who was the guy who was playing Spock in this fan film. I ended up doing his ears one day. And then there was the guy that used to do Kogan's Heroes on CBS.
Yeah.
His last name was Kogan. He was there to do a story on the episode and the fan film.
Okay.
And they decided they wanted to put him in the show and make him an admiral in a scene. So I ended up doing his makeup. So whether there was a magazine there that was doing an article on the whole episode, they didn't have an opportunity to interview me because I was busy all the time. So when the article came out, it was really very complimentary of me, although so inaccurate.
Mm.
Here's how. Because nobody had a chance to interview me. All they did was mention me, say they were very fortunate to have an Academy Award winning makeup artist who just happened to be an actor on set. The power of the press, huh?
Love it. Love it.
And that's the thing. And even clear back in the days of Babylon 5, TV Guide was out to do a expose on Babylon 5. And they got a photo of Claudia Christian and myself on the White Star. When they didn't know any better, they just said, okay, who did we just get a picture of? And somebody told them. And when it came out in the TV Guide, it got credited as Claudia Christian and Bill Mumy. Because they didn't know there was also a Bill Blair there. So a month later, on the back pages of the TV Guide, they printed the correction. So I printed up an 8x10 with the whole thing and put the correction in the 8x10 and said, yeah, we're kind of interchangeable when we're in makeup.
That's phenomenal.
I got it. They said, Bill, you got to go see the wall down by stage A. I went down because they always putting stuff up down there. And that was somebody just put it right up there that day and said, nice picture, wrong name.
That's phenomenal.
So we had fun. I've had moments like that throughout the years where it has been a lot of fun. The things that go on behind the scenes. Babylon 5 was like almost a second home, working 4 to 5 days a week. You know, we were very strict, 12-hour days. I had very few days that ever went over that because we had a lot of stunts that day. We had one day we were in and out in like 4 to 5 hours.
Oh, wow.
We were that efficient. Great bunch of people to be around. And in the end, they actually, even though it was a non-speaking role, in season 5, they had one episode that they turned me into one of the key characters. The sad part of it, they turned it into a key character and gave it to me because they took all the lines away from that character and gave it to another one so they could save money. But that's okay. I'm still known as the Precari priest in that episode, Day of the Dead.
Man.
So that's jumping back and forth quite a bit there, but that's just how I became both the actor and recognized as a makeup artist.
It's awesome. It's phenomenal. So I have to ask, was there any time where you just had the worst makeup and you couldn't say anything? Like, since you told the story about the Spock at Oracle for the Oracle company, I'd have to ask, like I said, the makeup. Was there something where you were like, "Hey, this doesn't work quite well. You should do this," or was there any times where you had to like correct the makeup artist?
Not correct a makeup artist, no. Okay. That I would not do. But I did have a lot of input from time to time on Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
Okay.
We had a series of aliens on that show that were known only as Westmore aliens. Why were they called Westmore aliens? Our makeup supervisor and designer was the Michael Westmore.
Okay.
Of the Westmore family. And these characters had no other names. There was not any race name given to them like the Klingons, the Jem'Dars, the Cardassians, the Breens, Romulans, whatever.
Okay.
These were sometimes one and done. I think the most we saw, one particular one was like that I was in was like 4 times. And the reason for that, Deep Space Nine is just like your airports here. You've got a lot of different races, a lot of different cultures passing through. A way station.
Yep.
Deep Space Nine will look very, very strange if all you ever saw were Klingons, Cardassians, Bajorans, and humans.
True.
With the occasional founder, the occasional brain, the occasional can't say what Jeffrey Combs played. Starts with V. I'm sorry, folks.
You're good.
I
You're
draw
good.
blanks every once in a while.
Gotcha.
But anyhow, so there was always a Westmore alien. So it was always something different going through there. We
Interesting.
had ones that we called asparagus head, tail head, catfish, snot nose. We just nicknamed them.
Gotcha.
Okay. And what would happen was I would go in the morning the night before. Mr. Westmore and the makeup artist that was going to be working with me had just pulled out a bunch of pieces, and they would lay them out and say, okay, work with these. And let's see, this day, let's put them in, blues and greens. Another day they would say, well, he was blues and greens last episode or yesterday, so today let's make him yellows and reds. They would vary the colors. And it was literally designed and applied to me that morning.
Wow.
Which, by the way, for a 7 o'clock shooting call for the crew and cast, I'd be in the makeup chair 3 hours ahead of that at 4 a.m., which means I'd be getting up out of bed at home around 2 to 2:30 to prep my face and everything, make sure it was ready for the makeup, drive to the studio, and be in that makeup chair by 4 a.m.
Wow.
And that's where I got my input, because I could sit there and, they'd be working on me, and all of a sudden I would say, what would happen if you put that piece there? Or what if we made my eyes, broader? I could do things like that. It was their choice, but they're getting one perspective of me. And again, I'm looking at a mirror in front of me as if it was the camera at a distance, and I might see something different. And they respected my choices too. However, there were some makeup artists, one in particular, that did not listen to me. One I had worked with at least one other time before. And he decided that he was the makeup artist, I was the actor, I should sit in that chair and be quiet.
Gotcha. You're the Mr. Potato Head for
him. And he did not remember me. So what he was going to do was what he was going to do. And we have a very strong adhesive that holds these appliances on. And I do mean appliances by prosthetics, not like a washer and dryer.
Yes.
And he decided to use the full strength, even though I suggested that he might want to cut it down by half for me, because my skin holds stuff very, very well.
And try to save him some money.
But not only did he use it full strength, he also used an astringent on my face and totally wrecked everything that I had prepped prior to coming in there. So what normally takes one person 1 hour at the end of the day maximum to take the makeup off of me, this day it took 2 makeup artists a total of 45 minutes or an hour and a half man hours to take this off.
Dang.
The assistant director that signs us out at the end of the day was wondering if I was okay, if something had gone wrong. I said, no, just only thing went wrong was somebody didn't listen to me in the morning. There's other disaster stories, like one time 2 makeup artists were trying to take me out of a makeup at the end of the day and not communicating with each other. And one of the chemicals that we use for removal is 99.9% alcohol. That's worse than the moonshine you get from eastern whatever state down in the South. I don't want to point a finger at anybody, but we know where you make that stuff. I've been there. And it's very good, by the way.
Yep. Absolutely.
Anyhow, I accidentally ended up with a brush full of that alcohol in my mouth without going into the details of how that happened. And so, the end of that story is neither one of those makeup artists were back ever in my presence. Mr. Westmore found out about what happened, and it's like, there's no room for this kind of error in this business.
Not at all.
You're supposed to be professional people. You can't have things like that happen. So that's the respect I had from those people there, and that was a lot for me. That's now awesome. Here's a funny story about Deep Space Nine. I'm rambling on. I could go on and on.
No, Bill, I'm telling you right now, this is gold. I'm really truly enjoying myself. Ramble away, my friend. Ramble away.
On Deep Space Nine, we talk about me and the makeup. There was an episode during Rocks and I call it the mini series. It was one of the episodes was called Rocks and Shoals. Okay. It wrapped around the series episodes where Jem'Hadar, Cardassians, Klingons, and Deep Space Nine Starfleet personnel were all at conflict.
Okay.
And Cisco and Dax and Garrick and Bashir and Nog, and I think, I'm not sure who else might have been in there, were stealing a Jem'Hadar ship to go back to infiltrate the Jem'Hadar homeworld. And so there had to be a couple of Starfleet crewmen on there. Well, the day before this scene was going to be shot, I was there as an alien. And near the end of the day, the assistant director, I guess, was talking to somebody. The director was talking to the assistant director, I don't recall right now, about the fact that, you know, we need some Starfleet crew people, that we need one more, that, you know, we don't want to burn one of our regulars, because all Starfleet wardrobe is custom fit.
Okay.
Except for me. I'm so generic. I could fit just about anything that was even close to my size.
That's incredible.
Even with the makeup, I used, when I was playing Klingons, I was actually wearing some of Worf's, in Deep Space Nine, I was wearing some of Worf's headpieces from Next Generation.
Really?
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Anyway, so at the end of this day, the assistant director just turned to the director, whoever it was he was talking to, just says, well, why don't we use Bill? We'll never see his face again anyways. Seemed like a logical choice. So again, I got an extra day's work. There's the little bit of trivia that I appeared in Deep Space Nine in one episode without makeup. Same thing happened to me in Enterprise later on.
Really?
I appeared in an episode as a Starfleet crewman out of makeup. There are times like that. Now in Babylon 5, I was in and out of makeup, and I played a lot of the creatures, and I also played a CNC bridge crewman.
Okay.
And there's a lot of places. So if people are fans of Babylon 5, just watch from halfway through season 1 through the end of the series through season 5, and you'll see me as both crewman, and you'll probably be able to, if you watch carefully, you'd be able to pick out a lot of my, especially the Minbaris that I played. One in particular where I play Sheridan's telepath in a specific episode. The Brakiri priest, very recognizable. However, another disaster story was when I was playing a Pak'mara.
Oh no!
This was a mechanical.
Yes.
A mechanical version of the Pak'mara, so
Yes.
that the tentacles would move, the eyes and the cheeks would animate. And I'm inside this thing, and I've only got 2 little pinholes to see light through to know kind of what direction I'm facing. And of course, the battery pack is coming out of the back of the head. So I cannot let that be revealed to camera. So I'm in this group of 5. We're kind of like in a group meeting, listening to somebody talk to us. We're the ambassadors, and we turn and leave. Well, if I turn, the battery pack's going to be exposed to camera. So I have to work out a little do-si-do with one of the other alien characters that I'm in the scene with, so that as I turn, he wraps around me and puts himself between the camera and myself so that the battery pack is not seen.
It makes sense.
So I'm rehearsing this, and we walk down this hallway after I turn, and then we exit to the right, down another hallway. So I rehearse, they give me a chance. I walk off all my steps to make sure that I'm going exactly the number of steps that I should, and then turn right down the hallway. Well, like anything happens, somehow I miscounted my steps. And in one of the takes, I walked right into the back wall and didn't turn where I'm supposed to. Big smack. And of course, everybody's worried because there's all this mechanical stuff inside this head, literally fractions of an inch from my eye. But nothing happened, nothing bad. Everybody cut, running up, are you okay? What happened? Blah, blah, blah. And I said, I was more apologetic. I said, I don't think I heard anything. Let me close my eyes, check all the mechanisms, check the servos. Did everything still animate? Okay. My fault. I messed up on my steps. This one's on me. Let's do it again. Went back. Each additional take was perfect. That one particular take, something happened. I miscounted my steps.
Dang.
Things like that. And this is why there'll be times, principal actors, they'll trip over their tongue on their lines. They'll forget a word. We go back and we do it again. In my case, I didn't have lines, but I had something specific I had to do. This was my turn to mess up. And everybody was very, very understanding. It's like nothing else. Hey, glad you're okay. Let's do it again.
That's awesome. See, it's stuff like that. You're just like, I count my steps. You know what? That's my bad. I miscounted. A lot of people be like, you know what? Hey, I can't see under these pinholes. No, you're like, I miscounted my steps. Like, again, true professional. All these stories, all I'm hearing is true professionalism. So, am I safe to assume that Guinness Book World Record will probably never be broken because of the introduction of CGI?
That's up for debate, but I'd say that it's a very good possibility that it's going to stand a very, very, very long time.
I think so too.
Doug Jones, somebody I'm quite familiar with. We've only met in person once for a very, very brief time.
Wow.
He's done a lot of very notable characters. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of people on Star Trek and Babylon 5 who also did some background characters. The stunt people who would always portray a lot of the different races. But yeah, I was in there day after day after day, and I was very fortunate. And when the Guinness World Record people found my online inquiry to them, they wrote back and they asked me to submit after they'd seen. They said, we don't have a category like that. And I said, okay, well, I'll start putting stuff together. It was another 6 weeks before they got back with me with all the formalities of what I had to do. Mm-hmm. It took me 3 years to compile everything, actually almost 4 years.
Wow.
Almost 4 years to compile it and make sure it was completely accurate, double, triple checking everything multiple times. I had a couple of friends that helped me, so it was a second and third set of eyes. And yeah, in the end, what started out on a spreadsheet of 450 rows, and I was going, because fortunately I had all my work records.
Yeah.
So once I eliminated all the duplicates, and then I eliminated all the human characters, mm-hmm. It was a very quick process. They proved the 202. And with that, I had to send in a lot of authenticating letters from people who had worked with me that could say, yes, this was him.
Wow.
And they only asked for 2. But how am I going to find 2 people that followed me and were present over 15 years worth of what I submitted?
You did 202. You did 202 in 15 years?
Uh-huh. About 15 years worth of my career.
See, just having that record over that amount of time, that's incredible too. Like, that's nuts. That's a lot of work.
My very first one, and I didn't even, that's the thing. We talked about my Spock character in that Oracle show.
Yeah.
I could not even use that one as part of the record because I had no record of it. I'd lost track of the producer. I did have somebody that was there in person, mm-hmm. but I had no video, no still shot of it.
Huh.
So it's that particular one isn't even part of that 202.
Sheesh.
I had to have stills. I had to have video and point out in the video as best I could time code wise to where they could see it. Uh-huh. Then I had to put a specific DVD together submission that somebody could sit and watch from beginning to end and count and make sure they were all there. And I had to fit 202 characters to within an hour. So that meant how long could each one last?
202 for an hour. That's 2 a minute at least. No, that's like 2.8 to 3.4.
Most of them lasted 10 to 15 seconds.
Sheesh. Yeah, oh man. And I thought it was at least a 20-year span to do all of that in 15 years. And some of them you probably couldn't find a still for or something like that. So the number is probably higher, right?
Well, I actually was very fortunate. Like I said, the first one that actually is part of the credit. was one of my first ones from Alien Nation.
Okay.
And that was in 1990. I'm going to call it 1992, 93. I'm pretty, no, excuse me, 1991.
That's still probably
It-
what, 4 years?
Well, so I mean, I'd have to actually go back and look at my spreadsheet.
Oh wow.
It might have been 93 now that I think about it. Might have been 93
Wow.
because I was out of the business in LA and Hollywood all of 1992.
Okay.
So it makes sense that it was 93 was my first one.
Hmm.
And that basically I started compiling all my stuff in 2007. And by the time I was done in 2010, 2011, those are the last ones. So if you figure from basically 93 through around 2010, the maximum would have been 17 years.
Yeah.
And a lot of that had been prior to that because I didn't have from after 2007, I pretty much decided the records I was going to work with. So from 2007 until now, yes, the number has unofficially increased. But I don't have an official number, but it's somewhere around 220. Because it takes into account now the personal appearances, like when I do a convention and my makeup artist is there, and we do a live demonstration for these folks, and sometimes we put on a skit even. One of the conventions, we actually did a little scene of the very first Klingon from the original series when he walks into the makeup room and talks to Fred Phillips, the makeup artist, and they decide what a Klingon's going to look like.
That's awesome. That is awesome. That's incredible. Like just that, like for everybody watching this, absolute professional and a hard, like to cram 200. No, that's insane. I,
So I
I
said sometimes it was as many as 4 and 5 days a week. Now here's how it also happens on Babylon 5.
Mhm.
On more than I think 1 or 2 occasions, I would go in the morning at 5:30 to get made up as one character, break for lunch around 12 noon, 1 o'clock. I'd get a short lunch because I'd eat lunch, go into the makeup trailer. They'd take one character off of me and put another one on. And so for the afternoon scenes and 1 or 2 scenes, I'd be a different character on the same day of work.
Is that typical?
No,
I
not at
didn't.
all.
Not at all.
It's
No.
just how fast they'd gotten with me.
Well,
And on one day, I was working behind the camera on Babylon 5.
Mhm.
Doing that. Remember that phrase I used early on in the interview? We talked about a stand-in.
Yes.
Okay, people that aren't familiar with that stand-in, we take the place of the actor, the
Mhm.
principal actor, during lighting and camera setup after they've rehearsed it. Because sometimes that can take a little while and we don't want to tire out the main actor.
Absolutely.
So I was there that day doing my stand-in work and working behind the scenes. Sorry, I just jumped the camera.
You're fine.
They were doing a scene. They needed a Minbari to fill a hole, as we call it.
Okay.
So somebody turned and said, well, we've got Bill here. How long have I got? And the makeup artist said, well, how long have we got? And they said, well, how long is the lighting set up? He said, about 45 minutes. Okay. I went to the makeup trailer, and in 45 minutes, I was camera ready in wardrobe on
Wow.
a makeup that would normally take anywhere from an hour and 45 minutes to 2 hours and 15. The only difference being that I was not going to be in close up.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't have to make the edges perfect. We just had to get it on and make it look right. And they had the wardrobe ready for me to step into as I came out of the makeup trailer. I was ready to go. I did the rest of my stand-in work that afternoon after that scene in makeup, and then I went and got cleaned up at the end of the day.
So, if you had a nickel for every time they said, "Well, we have Bill here," or we could use Bill,"
I'd be driving a Mercedes.
Oh man, that's incredible. All right, Bill, that's our time. Where can we find you on social media?
Well, the easiest way to look me up is go to your favorite browser, Google, Safari, whatever. Type in Bill Blair and the word actor. Because if you don't put actor after it, you're going to get that police chief from Canada that was in a lot of trouble not so long ago. He's still top of the charts for some reason. So if you do Bill Blair actor, it narrows it way down, and I'll be almost the entire first page or two of results. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram as Bill Blair for Real, the number 4, and the Real REEL. Bill Blair for Real. It's the same with Twitter. My website, alienactor.com.
You got that real early, didn't you?
That was when people started talking about my doing conventions, because people would be interested in what I've done. And when I started thinking about the fact that there are websites that people want to go to, it just seemed a natural fit. It just came right to me without even really having to give it a second thought. I play aliens. I'm an actor. No, not the alcoholic guy, but the alien actor guy.
That's epic. All right, Bill. Well, thank you for your time. Make sure we'll have all of the links down below for you guys to check it out. Thank you again, Bill. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Have a great time.